Hi, I'm Konrad Marshall, and from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, welcome to Good Weekend Talks, a magazine for your ears featuring in-depth conversations with fascinating people from sport and politics, science and culture, business and beyond. Every week you can download new episodes in which top journalists from across our newsrooms talk to compelling people about the definitive stories of the day. In this episode, we talk to Vincent Fantauzzo. Fantauzzo, of course, is the Melbourne-born portrait artist famous for hyper-realistic renderings of a long list of prominent people. He's painted movie stars like Hugh Jackman, underworld figures like Mick Gatto, politicians like Julia Gillard, athletes like Oscar Piastri, and icons like Michael Gudinski. I profiled Vincent for Good Weekend last month to learn more about not just his prize-winning works, but Vincent's rough-and-tumble beginnings, which included more than mere brushes with violence and crime, and which stem in some ways from a dysfunctional early life and a learning disability he kept hidden. Listeners should be advised that this episode deals with suicide and depression. If you are seeking help, please contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. But for now, it's my pleasure to have Vincent in the studio for a chat about his turbulent and remarkable life so far. Welcome, Vincent.
Thanks, Konrad. I think Mick Gatto refers to himself as a mediator and author.
Excellent title. I want to start with like a simple but potentially kind of complicated question, a question that's big and small. What do you love about painting?
Oh, I think the love started, it comes very easily to me. And I think when I was young, struggling with dyslexia and all the other neurodiversities, I couldn't find much confidence in things. I felt like a bit of a failure and started off with drawing, a bit of graffiti and then painting, but I think it gave me a sense of self-worth, and now it's really my happy place. I know it kind of saved my life in a lot of ways, and now I get to travel the world, and like yourself, I get to meet the most interesting people. Last week, Celeste Barber, or the week before, hanging out with Lindsay Fox, or I don't know what's coming the next week, or I spent the week before at Australia Zoo meeting animals and zookeepers. It's just the best job.
Yeah. You mentioned that when we met for that story, that the art or the portrait is kind of a means to an end, the end being that you get to meet someone really interesting and kind of connect with them.
I don't know which one I enjoy more, actually. Like, it's like, don't want to say a drug, but kind of, if it's not happening, I'm a bit lost.
You grew up in Broadmeadows in Melbourne's north, which for our listeners outside of Victoria is a kind of hardscrabble suburb. Tell us a little bit about life there with your Irish mum and Italian dad, and kind of how your family came to be.
Quick one. My parents met here at an immigration camp. I think originally my dad was at Bonagilla or something, and my mum then at Broadmeadows. He was in a band, they met there, and I think my mum thought Australia, the Birmingham she remembered was exciting, and she felt like she missed it, so she wanted to go back. Then they realized that it's not that great, so they moved back here to a not that great suburb. And yeah, I think it was, it felt very stressful, like there was nothing relaxing about it. There was violence everywhere. I think I mentioned you can't park your bike outside a shop. Someone has to guard it. Or you go down to the local school on a weekend and to throw a ball, and you just know you're going to have some kind of fight or altercation. It just didn't stop.
Yeah. And your home life was a bit chaotic as well. I mean, it sounds like you were moving constantly from sort of one housing commission flat or house to another, all sorts of extended family kind of crashing there.
Well, that was before. So we were renting down there, and it was when my parents broke up. I think so my mum would kind of suffer, and we would blame her for the breakup. My dad kind of didn't give her any help at all, no child support, no school uniforms, nothing. And that's when we started moving house a lot. So from then, it felt like, like a sense of homelessness in a way. Really, we knew once we stopped paying the rent, which happened every time, not that my mum didn't want to, she tried, but, we just couldn't afford to stay places. So it'd be, I would expect after a couple of months that the sheriffs come knocking at the door, find out where we are, and then overnight we move, and then the next place. And that went on for years, like at least would have been 20 places, sometimes in other people's houses, and just all of us pile into a bedroom. Most of the houses I think we got cheap because they were so shitty they were being knocked down shortly after. Then we found a commission house, and we stayed there for the last couple of years I was at home.
Yeah. You were drawing on the walls throughout this childhood too. Like you were already figuring out that you had some skill there with the pen or pencil in hand.
Yeah, I think I figured out that houses were so shitty they'd be knocked down. But like the gym where I painted on the wall and they sold it later, they probably could have done better out of the painting than the rent.
Now, for some kids who come from difficult homes or difficult upbringings and life is tricky and tough on the streets like that, school is their haven. School is like their safe place where they can kind of retreat from that world. But for you, it was sort of the opposite in some ways.
Yeah, I think that can kind of go two ways for people that have it tough at home. I think some kids find it at school, some find it in a sport. I hated school. I wanted to see my mates, obviously, but I don't mean sound Mr. Negative, but every day at school sucked. Maybe athletics day was okay. Even art class sucked. It was, it was just a constant reminder of being what I thought was stupid or dumb.
And nobody seemed to figure this out. That's because why you're masking it well, or you're finding a way to kind of get kicked out of class so that you would avoid assessment. It's amazing to me that you could get moved up through all of these grades and not really be able to read or write.
It kind of baffles me. Like maybe I was either a fucking amazing actor, or it made me feel like people didn't care. It's why now I'm so passionate about, even though there's more awareness, there's still the same stuff still happens in schools to kids. I find it weird. I didn't pass one class, not one. Most of the time, they didn't even give me a mark. It's not like I was, looked that bad that I had a personal aid or something they do to kids sometimes. Don't really think much of that. Or I couldn't copy off the board. I didn't hand in one piece of homework ever. Yeah, so, and also at home, like if your kid has never read even a Mr. Man book, I didn't even know how to spell my address. So yeah, I find it quite strange. I'm not sure how that happened.
And it turned dark for you quite young and quite early, right? I mean, I was writing out questions and thinking about what I was going to ask you about today, and this one didn't actually come up. It just popped up now. But I remember reading partly in your book this really heartbreaking sort of scene in which you kind of attempt to write a suicide note. How old were you then?
I would have been younger than 10. I could have been 8. And, it's whether they could understand the note or not. Like, I sat there with a knife thinking about how I could do this. I thought about what I haven't done yet, and do I need to do that first? Should I wait a little bit to do a couple more things that I wanted to do? Maybe kiss a girl or something, or, what will my mates think? Would people be better off? Was I just hard work? I just felt like invisible kind of, and I think that's also why maybe playing up, well, two things at school, you play up, so you're masking what's really happening home or learning, and you play up so you get kicked out of class, so you don't have to read out loud. Like, really, like, you can see, you're a teacher, you've been with these kids a while, you go around the classroom and you should know this kid can't read, but you make them stand up, and if they can't read, repeat after me. Then I think with a dyslexic, autistic, ADHD brain, sometimes it's something to do with the syllables breaking up, and you can't pronounce words properly. It's free instead of three. It's pillow, all these different things, and they make you say it, and then they make you try and correct yourself in front of a class. I know it sounds, like, yeah, big deal, but for a kid who already feels they're failing, that's just a kick in the face.
Violence is sort of where you went to early, and I mean, I don't want to make it sound like you enjoyed fighting, because it doesn't sound like you did at all. Tell me how that took shape in your childhood.
I enjoyed boxing and martial arts. I did enjoy fighting because, again, it felt like somewhere where I was actually respected or good at something. But I got, abuse-wise, not out on the street. I really got fucking tortured, and it's funny. You think you've passed something. See, it's like it frustrates me that I can't get through. I talk about the books, doing it all the time, tell the story all the time, and I'm like, I'm feeling good. It's not going to happen, and then it does.
What I was going to say was, right, it felt like some of those fights or acts of violence were really protective. Like, I spoke to, a really good friend of yours. You've been mates with him since you were 15, and he's like, my first interaction with Vinny was, I'm getting bullied by 3 kids who want to steal my lunch, and he only met me that morning, and he comes flying in out of nowhere, doing this flying kick to sort of stand up and go, he's my mate.
I watched too much Spider-Man, and I thought I was a vigilante. Kept my pants on the inside. But yeah, I felt like I just felt that, I think because maybe I wasn't protected where I should have been. I had an overwhelming sense of protection. But again, like, that's something that you think goes away. And, I'm still, someone breaks into your house and you're very overprotective, or, your kid gets mistreated. So if Val had a problem at school, my instinct would say, punch them in the face once, they won't do it again. And Ash is like, you can't do that, fair enough. Or, there's something with the teacher. I always, whether my kid might be wrong and I know that I'm doing it, but I always take their side. Like, it's saying that, I'm very also, I will teach my kids, if they can get away with a lot of stuff with me, but they can't get away with bullying someone or hurting someone's feelings consciously. I know it happens accidentally, but I just think when you do that, you got to kind of take responsibility. I
should also say for our listeners that the past is present in something that Vincent just said there. He was talking about what happens when someone breaks into your home, and that actually did happen in the last 12 months or so, when a thief entered Vinny's house and just sort of boldly tried to walk out the driveway with his Ducati motorbike until Asha Ketty, Vincent's wife, rang the alarm, and you came, bolting out of bed to go sort of restrain him, or?
Well, I was still half asleep. I put my Adidas pants on. I must have looked like some he broke into a drug dealer's house.
Totally, yeah.
And I ran downstairs and because I wasn't quite sure if they were still in the house. There was 2 of them at first. And I looked out the door and this guy, he had a helmet as well. And so they came for that reason. I believe I have very good instincts of who's a proper bad guy. And I was right learning his history later on. Put his female partner in a boot of a car and all sorts of stuff. He's not a good person. I think I know, but I'm not a jury, but I think I felt like I knew this is a proper bad guy. This is a guy that was in my house just earlier where my kids at that time, and Luca's my size, 15-year-old, this guy is armed and he would have attacked my kid. And fuck, I could have lose your kid.
Yeah.
And I walked out. It's very strange. I said, "Hey, mate, what are you doing?" And he looked at me and just kept going like I was fucking nothing. And, bigger than me, probably a bit younger, whatever. And so I walked towards him. I wasn't sure. I didn't run. I walked towards him and I said, "Don't drop the bike." So it belonged to Ducati. I'm an ambassador, so it wasn't even mine. But all I could think of is you were just in my house with my boys and my wife. And then he swung at me. So he dropped the bike, turned around, swung at me. And it's a weird thing. I had dreams. I lived in fear, especially when I was young. Our house got broken into, our stuff got stolen. I lived in fear of people coming into my house. I have dreams about it. And just other stuff that happened as well when a gang's coming to look for me when I was young and things. And he swung at me and it was a bit kung fu movie-ish. And I ducked, jumped on his back. I put him in like a chokehold and then he fell on top of me backwards. He's a big guy. And then Ash is on the phone to the police by now and she's screaming. And then she says he's got a knife and he's going to try and stab me. So I jumped on top of him and then I was whacking him. He's still fighting back. He wasn't junkie, but he was on ice. And when someone's on ice, they have they're a
lot of strength.
And they just keep going. So I wanted to slow down, but every time I slowed down, he came back again. And I think Asher was worried as well because it's going for so long. The police were actually amazing and very quick. But, 4 minutes in a street fight is a long, long time.
Yeah.
When it's constant action. But it's funny, I had trained for it my whole life. And yes, every time I slowed down, he kept coming. So I kept going. And then the police arrived and he was still conscious at that point. And then they took him outside and he wasn't anymore. And then I was worried about that.
Yeah.
I had no choice but to defend myself. But could I have done? I don't know. I just thought, wow, this is not good.
I've had some amazing stories like that. Reading through your book, Unveiled, I just couldn't believe all the tales one after another.
On that, I think so many people live in fear. It happens, and police told me this happens a lot more than you think, and they just get out on bail, which he didn't, so they were happy. But the overwhelming response from all sorts of people, you just wouldn't believe. Very important people, mums, politicians, all sorts, rang me and said, "I'm so glad you're okay, and I'm so glad that you're able to defend yourself, and I don't know what would have happened to me in that situation," and people are really scared. And I just think, imagine that, I was beat up in front of my family. So maybe, trying to stop him take my bike, I don't know. But I couldn't be walked over either. But I think a lot of people, it's why I reacted like I did, but why I don't react like that in a different situation, like a road rage or car or, I don't know. This guy's, I think I mentioned to you last, I don't know if this guy's cat died or his mum is sick or he just got divorced or whatever, and he's having a fuck day. I don't want to beat him up.
Yeah.
You know? And also, if someone confronts someone else in the car and bullies them, that might be enough for that person to tip over the edge as well. I worry about that stuff like mental health.
There's an episode of The Simpsons.
I'm sure I would know it.
Where Bart stumbles into a mafia bar and ends up working there after school, pouring Manhattans for the mob. For you, this was art imitating life.
It was so close to the Simpsons episode. What was his name? Junior in the what did they call him? Something.
Yeah.
Anyway, they gave me everyone has a nickname, Nick the Knife or Spider. Yeah, all these different nicknames, and I became Junior right away, and it was exactly that. I walk in, I cook them a pasta, I bring it to the table. They're having cigars, and they all took me under my wing, and I thought, I like gangsters.
There's nothing linear or simple about your biography. I mean, there's tales involving joyrides and stolen guns and the months or the year where you ran a marijuana grow house.
Yep, and because of legal, some of them aren't even in there.
So we should get to your art, though, given that that's what brought you to the public eye. So you had this innate gift for kind of painting and drawing, but never really had any formal instruction until you went to RMIT, and you had to forge transcripts in order to get in there. But I want to know what it was like when you were there at school, because I'm imagining it's this simultaneous thing. You're like loving the practical study of art, painting every day, learning new methods, but at the same time, you're like hustling and hiding and just trying to hope that people don't discover that you can't do these art essays.
So I went to uni. Well, I tried to get into VCA. I got rejected. Then I tried to get into RMIT. I got rejected as well. Then a whole year later, I got into RMIT. I went for a couple of months, and it's like when I went back to school by myself in high school, and I thought I could do it, and I went to RMIT. Sorry if the answer's too long. And I thought, oh, fuck, I can't do this because they're all clever and I'm still dumb at this point. I went there thinking this would provide me with a job maybe one day. I'm doing a degree, it's university. Mm-hmm. And then I realized that it's not like that at all. It's also, you have painting, different degrees, painting degree, drawing degree, a film degree, printmaking. It's like an artist can do all of those things. So I found that odd, and I thought, I want to do those things as well. Now I won't learn it. Fuck it. I'll just keep painting portraits and sports memorabilia and make some money. So I did that, ended up dealing drugs and other things as well. And I got back into uni the next year, and then I was determined to try and but again, I just felt like I was lying my way through. I desperately wanted to have passed something. So in between that, all the university and leaving school at 13 or 14, I had all these jobs and I failed every single one. I worked as a chef, couldn't do the class. Worked as a printer, fucking shit job that was, and I couldn't pass. It just one thing after another. Yeah, and I was back in that hole.
Being at RMIT, you, in order to get by, ended up sort of paying other students to like write essays for you. And then I think it was in third year, you paid them to write an essay for you. They plagiarized the essay. Mm. And so you were found out and you had this decision to make. Do I tell the powers that be I can't read or write?
Yeah, I thought I thought it was kind of cool that, I can paint pictures and pay someone. I've been hanging out with too many dodgy people for too long.
Sure.
And shortcuts. And then, I paid this one guy. I knew he was a dick, but I figured it out even more so. But, I'm the one doing the wrong thing. So he plagiarized an essay, gave it to me, handed it in. And it was that moment where tell them that I think I'm dyslexic and can't look it up. It's a stupid word. Can't look it up. There was no, phone and internets and things to help. So I didn't know what it was. I just thought I was stupid. I couldn't say I'm stupid. So I said, I think I'm dyslexic. Or I say I can't read and write and I paid someone. Or I just say I did it myself and cheated. So I chose the one that I wanted to say my whole life but was scared of. And then I was hoping for, I got different reactions. One, impartial, couldn't give a fuck. One, I shouldn't say that, just didn't say much. Or that's what I felt, not probably what she thought. And one said this was I still think there's people that are evil and she's probably eating children or something. Yeah. Anyway, she said, oh, well, if you cheated on that one and you can't read and write, then you've cheated on all of them. This is my third year, final semester. So she said, you have to repeat every year of history before you get your degree.
Yeah.
And you're a liar. And then the other guy, I could see, the guy that I didn't necessarily bond with before.
This was your third year painting teacher, David Thomas.
Yes, David, amazing Thomas. And he's very academic. He's very conceptual and philosophical. And I always felt like an outsider in that way. And he is philosophical. And he said, oh, all right, let's try and help you. Like, if you can show you're dyslexic, then I will do my best to figure this out. Like, even that, again, some stuff makes me emotional. That, I do luck out with good people in my life when shit's looking really bad. He was one of them, and I appreciate it so much. So then I did this test, which we'll get onto later, how hard it is for people to get tested that can't even look the word up, afraid and can't afford to get a test. So I sold one of my motorbikes, my means of transport, had to do this test, cost a fortune. The people that do the test now have contacted me not too long ago, and we're going to try and work on hearing what I said. We're going to try and work on making testing easier for people. That's something I really want to do. Yes, I then had a test, and I felt, okay, I finally figured out what it was. I'm not trying. I was always trying. Am I stupid, or what is this thing? And so I figured, okay, that explains a lot, and I somewhat felt comforted, but I had no idea of the benefits of it. And I also was thinking, I can't become a fireman. I can't become a police officer, or, all these different things, most of which I didn't want to do anyway. But it just makes you feel, like I'm going to go nowhere.
But you had some support from our RMIT through David. They were good. They helped you sort of work with a disability liaison, and
that's a hard thing too. Yeah. Disability liaison, like it's a special class at school again. So that was a bit of I'm fucking back. Yep.
Right. But you got through. You got your bachelor's. Yep. You also got your master's in fine art. You got an artist residency after that, then a solo show at Diane Tanz's gallery in Fitzroy. And your work at that time was quite figurative in nature. So I just wondered, how was it that you sort of slid into the niche of portraiture? Was that like pretty soon after you had that residency and kind of emerged, or?
I guess I was doing portraiture when I was in primary school.
Yeah.
Like every day. I would start off with caricatures and mates and sometimes teachers. I could paint, or I could draw very accurately without any teaching. So it was all, but then it was that space where I draw the science teacher and he didn't make me do science anymore. I could just draw pictures. It was like this magical way out of things. Yeah. I think of like an animation with a kid and he can draw his way out of situations. It was like that.
Yeah. Now, in many ways, you're sort of famous for doing portraits of famous people. And it wasn't long before you painted probably the most famous person ever in your orbit. That's Heath Ledger. How did that come to be?
I had a very good mate, Enfer Jones. He's hip-hop singer, 1200 Techniques, you probably heard it growing up. And we lived together for some time. We went everywhere together. He's from WA, went to primary school and high school with Heath. And they have this clique of people that very creative and ambitious. They're all from WA. They all escaped for a few years to try and do special stuff. Heath is one of them. So he would come and hang out at our house, or we'd, see him whenever he was in Melbourne. But it was always kind of in a group setting. And it wasn't really like, we already had a strong connection. We just hadn't had, the time alone to, like, we were, you're in a group and you make passing comments and conversations and you're like, oh, fuck, yeah, I agree. Why isn't that happening? And we're very passionate about similar things. And we wanted to do the portrait for years and it didn't happen. He was there. I was there. He also wasn't ready and he was very spiritual and I didn't realize how spiritual. And he felt like having his portrait done was like capturing his soul in a way. Took it really seriously. I went to see him that Christmas. Just so happened he was in Perth and I went to Perth and we had this the most amazing weekend of just letting every kind of thought out and boundaries gone about what we can talk about and really everything, stuff you hide and you can't share, and relationships and his relationship, and he'd broken up with his girlfriend. He couldn't see his kid. It was killing him. He was starved himself for that role. He invested so much in Batman. He wasn't drinking. He was thinking about the future a lot, but very vulnerable. He was thinking about his friends that he had for a long time. Were they using me? Are they using me? Are they my friends? New friends know him for someone he is now. He'll never be able to do that again. Make original friends and he's questioning old friends. He's questioning that everyone he meets wants something and eventually they'll ask. And not completely, it's not like he was cynical, believed in no one. He wanted to believe and it was hurting him that he couldn't or it wasn't working.
And you had this scene unfold where he sort of woke up one morning and went out onto the lawn?
Yeah, arrived, we had a big late night. Well, he wasn't drinking, so he was fresh in the morning. I wasn't. Arrived at his house about 7 a.m. and because we were so excited to do it, we got up and I walked in and he said nothing to me. He just grabbed as we walked through and I followed him. I just had to it was like he was already in a zone and didn't even want to talk. He just grabbed the chair and I followed him. He sat it down and sat on it. He was in his pajama pants, no shoes and no t-shirt on. And he sat there without saying what we're doing. And so I figured it out, grabbed my camera and he sat in a chair. And he just quietly, for an awkwardly long time, he just stared like he's just sitting there breathing until the point where he just went to another place. And I thought, oh, fuck, he's lost it. I'll just take some photos. And even though he's blank as can be, he didn't move. I'm like, this is weird, but interesting. And he got out of the chair and he walked around. I sat in front of himself and so it was like he's still there.
Yeah.
This Heath stayed and one got up and walked around and he on one knee and he looked himself in the eyes and again, really long time. This is I wish I filmed it, how powerful it was. Really, you look in the mirror and you're like, who the fuck am I? What is all this? As he was doing it without words, I felt like I was hearing all the dialogue of things we spoke about. Didn't look at me like I wasn't there. Then he got up, walked to one side, and he started screaming, but not a normal scream. He was screaming. It was a noise I hadn't heard, goosebumps thinking about it. fierce spit coming out of his mouth, in his face. He's there and he's in his face and angry. It's veins popping out. Then he stopped and just walked around, relaxed. Came to the other side, he laughed. We spit in his ear so I couldn't hear it. And he's telling himself stuff. Like, he's actually telling himself stuff. And this went on for it felt like a long time. It's probably 10 minutes. And then I was like, fuck, how am I going to make this into a painting? I always work with amazing people. This was true performance about his life.
Amazing. What's life like for you now, Vincent? Because it has to be said that your dyslexia and dyscalculia is just kind of the beginning of your processing issues. You've mentioned before to me how you probably can't tell left from right. You don't really know the sequence of the 4 seasons or rattling off the months of the year.
I don't even know what month it is now.
There you go. And you miss appointments, lose keys, wallets.
Yep.
It sounds very difficult, and it sounds like Asha must be a saint.
No, she's lucky. I tell her every day. I feel like I just learned it's just normal for me. But I think if it happens to someone else or someone's new in my life, like the gallery manager, actually she has a dyslexic daughter, but people new in your life, they're like, how the fuck do you live like this? I get lost coming here. I painted all night last night because I forgot I was coming. I knew, and I've been looking forward to it, but I forgot. And then I stayed up till 4. And you just, and it's not just that, it's general memory. It's friends and people. I can't remember anyone's name. It's
have trouble with faces sometimes too, don't you?
Completely with faces. It happens to me so often out of context. But then once I'm like, oh, fuck, yes, it's you, I can remember every part of our conversation, and I really care about the person, and it's so embarrassing, and I feel like it makes you feel like you let people down a lot. So I try and just tell myself about all the good stuff as well, so many good things. And that's why, I desperately want to get testing, there's a dental van and the eye van, all those things, ears, hearing. I found out my son had an eye problem because of the van. I want a van to go into schools, one, to teach all the other kids that some of your favorite people that inspire you have these things, like Steven Spielberg, Richard Branson, the 100-meter sprinter that won the gold medal, all these musicians, all sorts. And then also test the kids in, elite schools. Often the parents are embarrassed and the kids are, they get them tutors, which doesn't work. And in lower demographic schools, kids can't afford to get tested. It could be a single mum. She doesn't even know because she's so busy treading water. And then the testing's expensive. And then you also need, I'd like to have somewhere where they can follow on, get looked after, and maybe have a bit of camaraderie with, or mentor with someone that's successful and has it.
What about another goal in your life? It was a great quote from the story. You want to Jamie Oliver the art world.
Yeah. So, I feel like I might be able to start to get there as well. So if you look, again, I'm talking about things. So I don't remember much, but I do remember in youth prisons, there's a big percentage of those kids that have all these neurodiversities or a broken home, all those different things. And some of them, sport gets some kids out, music does. There's a lot of kids that are good at art and they're creative, and it's no option for them. It doesn't seem appealing. So if I can make, and also for adults, and I always use the example, unless you're a big art fan, if you ask anyone to name 5 artists, they can't. So all Blackman, Olsen, Picasso, all those blue chip kind of people. It's the best job.
Mostly dead guys, right?
Yes, dead guys,
Most people couldn't name 5 Australian contemporary artists right now.
I have to watch my back too. So it's a weird thing. Anyway, I want to do that so kids can not be embarrassed of having some commerciality or a lot. Some kids make art and they want to be a millionaire like other kids. Go for it. Do whatever you like. Doesn't take away their integrity. They're just ambitious.
When I wrote the first profile piece that I did of you, because we met quite a few years ago.
11
That's
years.
right. The headline of that story was Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man. Now, now we're both in our late 40s. You seem very young at heart, though, but there is one wonderful kind of middle-aged aspect of your life that I enjoy and I came along to see. Fight Club. Tell us a little bit about Fight Club, what you do and what you get from it.
I tell you, like I said, having good people. I had some shit people when I was young. I have the most amazing friends. Not just Fight Club, but Fight Club is it change. And I don't want to say it's me. It's the whole group. It changes lives and changes people. And I've watched people that didn't know each other and wouldn't ever have met become great friends. But there is, plastic surgeons, entrepreneurs, music, business, politicians, big TV producers, my mates from soccer, the dads we've all become amazing friends. And when you're there, and you wouldn't believe the people, the success, but how humble and supportive. They're a bunch of middle-aged, uncoordinated, successful people that I get to yell at. And I wish everyone could have that. You're not catching up in a pub and everyone's there, but we're still laughing just as much.
So for the listeners, this is twice a week, early morning, Tuesday and Thursday, in Vincent's studio. So there's this backdrop of sketches and half-done paintings and finished paintings all over the walls, and then a bunch of sweaty dudes kind of sparring and hitting speedballs.
Yeah, it's the energy is amazing. We do play Rocky soundtrack sometimes.
Now, the other paintings that I noticed when I was in there watching that, this last question for you, were abstract ones, which is a bit of a departure for you. It's going somewhere new. Tell us a little bit about them. They're sort of, if I had to describe them to readers, they're these sort of script-like curls and swirls over pastel backgrounds, at least one series that I saw.
Yep. So back to when I was a kid trying to write that note, for example, or copy off the board, I had no idea what I was writing or if it made sense. I was writing down a story. I wanted to write stories. And I looked at it. It made probably no sense to anyone, but it looked pretty good. I did fake cursive writing. And so I said, I'll just make that double line and I'll put a shadow on it. And it became graffiti looking in the beginning. And then it became patterns and it became really therapeutic for me to paint something that doesn't have to be anything. But I was really embarrassed to show the work because when I was at uni, I was known for this figurative stuff and I love abstract painting. I just didn't know how to almost defend myself about why. I didn't know about art movements. Everything had to be referenced to something. And I also love it because it shows people, well, one, I like all art. I don't expect anyone to do what I do. And I want kids to know that you can, kids get put off, use the example, their dog looks like a horse. And I like dog horses, like anything, just do whatever you like. But for me, it's just fun. Yeah.
I love the dog horse. Thanks so much for coming in, Vincent. It was great to catch up again.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. And, for kids that want to become artists, you can have an incredible life.
That was Australian portrait artist Vincent Fantauzzo on the latest Good Weekend Talks. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to subscribe, rate and comment wherever you get your podcasts and keep tuning in for more compelling conversations. Good Weekend Talks is brought to you by the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age, proud newsrooms powered by subscriptions. To support independent journalism, search Subscribe Sydney Morning Herald or The Age. This episode of Good Weekend Talks is produced by Konrad Marshall and edited by Tim Mummery with technical assistance from Cormac Lally. Tammy Mills is our executive producer, Tom McKendrick is head of audio, and Greg Callahan is the acting editor of Good Weekend.